Hey everybody, what are you doing? Brr, it's cold today. Here I am, here you are, here we are. I don't know why I blow my nose every time I start a podcast, but that's my thing, I guess. How are you today? Oh, I forgot my list. Hang on. Come here, big kitty. Come here, come here. How are you all doing today? I'm doing good. Yeah. So here we are in Podcastville. You know what? Someone mentioned twice that they don't get notified about YouTube. And I think that's really strange because maybe that's why the channel's not growing. Maybe they're not notifying anybody or something. I don't know. My screen's blinking on and off because I'm waiting for the new cord to come to Apple so they can install it. So I hope it's not blinking off for you. I think it isn't. I think it's just my end. I think it's just blinking here. So anyway, that's life, I guess. But YouTube, I wish... Now, I've heard other people on their podcast say YouTube isn't notifying people, but that's really weird that YouTube's not notifying you. I don't know what to do about that either. I'm so lame at all this stuff. I have no idea what to do about that, but that's a bummer that you don't get notified about my podcasts. I have another, thing and another computer, and it gets notified. So somebody's maybe getting notified, but I don't know why you're not getting notified. Man, I'm so bad at this stuff. Somebody asked me about the album Nice Day for Something and what I thought of it. And I was for the life of me, I can't remember what that album even sounded like or what the songs were. I have no idea. I know it's my album, but I just have no idea what that album is about or what's going on, you know. It's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah. I've no idea. Nice Day for Something. Yeah, that was a Columbia album with Keith Knudsen. And I just have no idea. I have no idea. I don't remember what it sounded like or anything or any of the songs or even what I was doing in that at that point, you know. I just don't know. Anyway. And somebody else asked me about Grateful Dead. Did I have any Grateful Dead stories? Because they said they knew that I had played a few concerts with those guys in the old days when there'd be a bunch of bands, and they were one of the bands also. I really don't have any Grateful Dead stories, and I really didn't really know those guys. I never hung out with those guys and never knew them. It would have been nice to know them, but I didn't. So that's all I can tell you. I didn't know them, and I don't have any stories about them. Somebody mentioned the benefit for Chet Helms when he had stents, and they had a benefit for him to pay for his heart thing. And John Ford Noonan was not my roadie. He came there to dance. He was a wild dancer. He would just get up like a big giant thing and just dance all crazy. So I brought him with me just as a dancer, but he wasn't a roadie on that gig. In fact, John was never a roadie for me. He was just a great friend and a gifted individual. And so I really enjoyed that. Anyway, that was a fun gig. You know, Chet did he tried to, I forget what it was called, but he tried to do a Monterey Pop Festival, sort of revisited, you know. So he was going to do a family dog at Monterey at the fairgrounds where they had the Monterey Pop Festival, and he promoted this big concert, and they had all these bands, and it was a total failure. That was the last time I think I saw Chet. I can't remember if that was before the Fisherman's Hall, the Seaman's Hall benefit, or after. You might refresh my memory, but that was anyway, he threw this gig at that place where Monterey Pop was, and only 100 people showed up. It was like no one was there. And the Clash on their first tour, they played there. That was their first U.S. tour. And they played that gig, and they were up on stage. There was like, 50, 60 people in the audience. You could walk right up to the stage and watch them, but they were pretty good. They were pretty good. They were pretty good. That was a fun gig, but for Chet it was really a disaster. It was really a disaster for everybody, I guess. But I remember Chet and I were walking. We were walking somewhere behind the scenes there, just walking along, and Chet just broke down and started crying because it was such a failure, and I guess it was a real failure, and I felt so bad for him. And I says, "That's all right, Chet. It's going to be okay." We were both talking, and he was just devastated by that. It was such a sad moment because the family dog was such a glorious thing, and he really had the real vibe. It was different than the Fillmore. The Fillmore was Bill Graham, and he was kind of an aggressive personality, but Chet was all about love, and just Chet was one of those guys with a big heart. And so it was so sad that gig didn't go good. Nobody showed up. Nobody showed up. And so he was devastated, and I felt really bad for him. And I felt bad for him. Yeah, I really felt bad for Chet that day because he was really crushed, I don't know what to say about that. Frank Davis. Somebody asked me about Frank Davis. And Frank was my drummer on the second album. And I met Frank when I was going to junior college in Fresno City College. I was that for a bad thing. And Fresno City College was, I met Frank there. And he was of all the drummers I ever played with, he was my favorite drummer to play with. Him and I just clicked, And his brother was my roadie for a while, and he got involved in stuff and went to prison, I guess. But Frank was a great guy, man, and it was really great playing with him. It just felt right, he just felt right. It was good. I'm trying to cover all these little questions. Big John Ford Noonan. When I had my gym and Ali was hanging out, Muhammad Ali was hanging out at my gym, and Tommy Hearns was there, and Big John came in, and he would be shadow boxing, and he looked like a real old boxer, even though he wasn't. He had all the moves, and he was going, and he was just like, and he was just one of those guys, man. He was such a funny character, man. He was really great, and when he was hanging out at my gym, it was really fun. We really enjoyed that. It was so good being around Ali, man. He was just, he had such a vibe, man. He had such a vibe. Hello, Big Kitty. We're doing a podcast, and you're here today. The Big Kitty's here, man. He's so happy the keyboard's not here. He is so pissed. He wouldn't even come up here when the keyboard was here. He was so mad at me. Say hello to everybody. Say hello to everybody. Let him see your little pretty face. Anyway, you're standing on my list. I can't read what I'm supposed to say here. Come on, move. He's coming over to say hello. Say hello to everybody. Don't step on my keyboard. Don't cancel me out. Oh. Okay, I made it. Wow, I didn't have a lot to talk about today. Frank Davis, man, he was such a good drummer. Frank committed suicide, and I cried. That was sad. That was sad. Him and I, we got banned from all the rehearsal rooms. They had rooms where you could go in and play piano and hang out in the music department at Fresno City College, and we got banned from all those rooms for playing rock and roll, man. They kicked us out, and we were banned from those rooms. That was a fun time. Somebody asked me if I ever met Charles Manson. I didn't ever meet him, but there was reports of them driving around in dune buggies, shooting up cars and stuff, and actually that was us driving around in the dune buggies, shooting cars. This is a true story. Frosty and I and Mary, we would get in about a dune buggy, a Myers Manx dune buggy, and we would cruise around up on Mulholland and go way by Malibu Lake and just all over the place, and we would see old cars. That was when there was just cars laying around places, and we would go over and we would spin Brodies and we had guns, and we would spin Brodies in what do you call it? In the fuck, my mind's slipping. Anyway, we would shoot the cars with guns, you know. And then one time the sheriff's helicopter came in, so we went and drove into the trees, and we hid in the trees, and they were all cruising around trying to find us, and we were hiding in there, you know, because we were up there shooting. And so there was lots of reports of Manson and dune buggies shooting all up in there and shooting, and I'm sure that was us because we were doing it, man. We bought all these guns and we rode up there and we would just ride around and shoot shit. You know, it was really fun, and we didn't hurt anything. And the cars were abandoned cars, so we weren't shooting the good stuff, but it was fun. You know, we would do it, and that's right when I first met Mary, man. It was well, I'd known her. We were married by then, but we were fucking crazy back then. You know what we used to do in Mill Valley? We used to have BB gun wars. Now, you got to understand, this is during Vietnam, and everything was peace and love, you know. But we bought all these BB guns, and we would split up into two teams, and we would go into the redwood forest, and one team would go out 5 minutes before the other team, and then we would go out there and try to find them and shoot them and kill them, you know. And so we were out there. Anyway, we played BB gun war a lot, man. It was so crazy. One time, everybody got killed except for Mary. Everybody on our team was dead except for Mary. And we had this old swimming pool that was empty. When we bought the property, it was there. It was just an abandoned old pool. And anyway, Mary single-handedly, man, she was an amazing person. Single-handedly, she killed the whole other team. And they were chasing her, and she jumped into the swimming pool and shooting at him with the BB gun. And somehow she shot the whole other team all by herself after we were all killed. So she was a warrior, man. She was the coolest person. And I really loved her. It was good, man. It was good. Yeah. But that's what we used to do. We used to do some crazy shit. And one time we were playing BB gun war, and Frosty on the other team, he stuck his head out from behind a tree, and I shot at him. And the BB went in his nose. And we were fucking crazy. The BB went in his nose, but he didn't know it was in his nose because it went inside his nose, you know. And so the scab kept falling off his nose. The scab kept falling off his nose. And so then finally he saw a little shiny thing in there, and he goes, oh, fuck, the BB's in my nose, you know. And so he pushed the BB out. It was so painful, he said he almost passed out when the BB popped out of his nose. But I'm so glad I didn't hit him in the eye or something, you know. So we were just fucking nuts, you know, just totally nuts. Yeah. One time, want to hear another story? I think I told this before, but I'll tell it again. We were staying at the Howard Johnson Motel right there by Marin City, between Sausalito and Mill Valley. There was a hotel, Howard Johnson's, and we were staying there. We were in the back, and there was a jogging path going by past the parking lot. It went by, you know, like jogging path, right? And so the Frank Davis, who was playing with me at that time, he pulled into the parking lot in the rental car, and I was up in the room, and they pulled in the rental car, and so I went out of the balcony and I shot all the windows out of the rental car. And so Frank gets up, Frank gets out of the rental car and picks up a big rock, and the glass doors were sliding glass doors. And so he takes this big rock and he throws the rock and breaks the window of the hotel, you know, and it was crazy. And then and in the hotel, they had these chandeliers, and it had kind of a thin thing around it, and it was hanging from a chain. So we would swing the chandelier and add all these little light bulbs in it, and we would try to shoot the light bulbs out of the chandelier in the hotel room. So the chandelier was shaking there, and we were shooting the light bulbs, and there was a table under the chandelier. So when a light bulb would break, all the glass would fall on the table and everything. So anyway, he had broken the window, so I called the front desk, and I says, oh, some joggers were jogging by the hotel, and those joggers were jogging by the hotel, and they threw a rock through our window because we were yelling at them. And he says, what? And he says, yeah, these joggers threw a rock through our window because I didn't want to, you know, we broke the window. And so we didn't think anything of it. And we're getting loaded. We're smoking doobie. And this is when doobie, you get in a lot of trouble for it. and we're smoking. It's like a Cheech and Chong movie in there, and the table's there, and the glass is all on the table, and the windows are all shot out of the car, you know. And so we hear a knock on the door, and we open the door, and it's the manager of the hotel, and he's got 2 sheriffs with him. So here, and it's like a Cheech and Chong when this big cloud of smoke goes out. There's 2 sheriffs standing there, and the manager of the hotel. So they came into the room, and he says, "We want to see the window." And I go over there, and then I was trying to stand so they couldn't see the broken glass on the table, you know. But they saw it. But they didn't say anything. Anyway, they looked at the window broken, and then they looked out and saw the car's windows were all shot out, and anyway, it was and for some reason they just left and didn't arrest us. And to this day, I don't know why they didn't arrest us, man. We were smoking so much pot. It was just it was a total Cheech and Chong movie. It was just fucking crazy. And so, oh wow, I forgot all about this story. Yeah, so then they left, and so that was the end of that episode. But we, you know, the car was fucked up, and the hotel room was fucked up, and we were fucked up, and so about I guess 6 months later, we came back to that hotel. Now we had a house in Mill Valley, but we would rent rooms down at that hotel, so that we would, you know, so we'd had a place to go crazy, and about 6 months later, we come back to the hotel, and we come back in, and we come to check in, and the manager goes, "Mr. Michaels, did you bring your BB gun this time?" And I go, "No." You know, they remembered, but for some, they were cool because we rented so many rooms, they didn't want to really lose us as a customer, I guess. Today, we'd probably been arrested for that shit, but who knows? We should have been arrested back then. That was crazy. And then about a year later, Frank was shot to death in that hotel room. Frank, the guy that was driving the car, played with me, who I shut the windows out when he pulled up. He was doing a drug deal at the hotel, and these guys just shot him to death in the hotel room, and that was sort of That was sort of the end of me in Mill Valley, man. After that, I came back to LA. I just thought I've had enough. You know, people are dying, and it was just too crazy. But Frank, man, got shot to death right in that hotel room. And he knew the guys that shot him, but they just shot him over not very much money. They just had no value, I guess, in life. And nobody really knew who did it, but everybody thought people did it. So we were all running around with guns, and we were all paranoid, and there was this one guy, we thought he did it, so we were sort of tailing him. We had people watching him. So my wife, Mary, she was at some kind of dance class or some kind of yoga or whatever it was. And this girl comes into the class and tells her, Big John says hello. Now, not John Ford Noonan, this other guy's name was John. And he says hello. And she came home and she told me, some girl came up to me in the dance thing and said, Big John says hello. And so that guy that we were tailing, that was his way of knowing that he knew where my family was and everything. So, and people were dying, man. It was sort of sketchy. So at that point, I said, you know what? It's time to move. So that's when we left Mill Valley. Too much death and threats, and it was just getting a little crazy, man. It was getting a little crazy, but that was then. This is now. Here we are. I don't know what to say. Yeah, that was some crazy times. Crazy times. Yeah, I miss Frank. That was terrible, man. He was one of my best friends, and he got shot to death right there in that hotel room where we'd partied a million times. So could have been any of us. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why YouTube isn't notifying everybody. That's so weird. YouTube, come on, don't hold us down, man. I have a feeling they're not recommending our channel. I just had breakfast at Killer Shrimp. We open at 7 in the morning, and we're open. It's just insane. That place is insane. And so I go there every morning and have breakfast, and I just got back from that. And yeah, I'm telling you a few stories. My optometrist, he's retired now, but he was a check collector, and he wrote a book about checks. And he collected all these checks from Benjamin Franklin and Kennedy, and you name it. He had checks from throughout history. And he bought them at auctions, and he'd been collecting checks since he was a kid. And I always thought, well, how boring he's collecting checks, you know. And he had a bestseller book. It was a bestseller, and it was about checks. And it was so interesting of a book. I skimmed through a little bit of it and looked at a few pages, and it was interesting, you know. It was interesting. I didn't read the whole thing because I'm not that kind of guy, but it was interesting. But one day I was in his office, and he says, "Look at this check I just bought." And he bought this check at an auction, and these are like certified real deal checks. And he was a real serious check collector. And so he shows me this check, and it's Lee Harvey Oswald's last paycheck from the school book depository. His last paycheck from the school book depository. And guess who endorsed the check on the back and cashed it for him? This is going to blow your mind. Think about it for a second. Who would it be? Who was the last person to cash his check and they endorsed it on the back with their signature? Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby. The guy who killed Oswald had cashed his check 5 weeks earlier, or 3 weeks, 5 weeks earlier. He'd cashed his check and signed the back of it for him and deposited it. So, and the Warren Commission, the fucking Warren Commission, they saw that check and they didn't put it in the report. There was a lot of stuff that happened that they didn't put in the report. And I wanted to buy that check, so I offered to buy the check from my friend because I thought that was such an important check. And when he wrote his book about checks, I said, "Why didn't you put the Oswald check in there?" And he said he was afraid. He was afraid to put the Oswald check in the report because he was afraid of the government. And so I said, "Well, sell it to me. I'll publicize it. I'll put it on my thing, you know." And this is not too long ago when podcasts were first starting and stuff. And I said, "I'll start a podcast. I'll put it on. I'll put it in my movie. I'll do something. Let me buy that check." But he said no. He was donating all his checks to NYU. So I don't know if he ever donated that check to NYU, but that's where he went to school, was NYU. So he was going to, when he was done with this trip, he was going to donate all these famous checks to NYU. Now I don't know if he ever did that. And he retired, and I sort of lost touch with him. I've tried to reach out to him, but sort of lost touch with him. Dr. Renard was his name. And he had Oswald's payroll check, and Jack Ruby endorsed it. Isn't that the fucking amazing? I held the check in my hand. I turned it over. He says, "Look at this." And I was in his office, and I went, whoa. I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe it. It was Oswald's final payroll check, and Jack Ruby cashed that check. And then weeks later, Jack Ruby killed Oswald. That is that's amazing shit. And yeah, that's amazing shit. Yeah. So look at your comments. People ask me stuff, and then I went, "Oh, I forgot all about that." And it reminds me. So your comments are really important, because when you ask me about stuff that happened in the past, it triggers stuff, and I remember other stuff. And I remember those things. Like asking me about Nice Day for Something. I have no idea what that album sounds like or what I even did on that album. You know, a lot of my albums, I just have no idea. I don't remember them at all. I don't know if my mind's going or it's been 50 years. You know, how am I supposed to remember what I did 50 years ago? Unless I'm laying around listening to my own records for 50 years. That would be funny. Anyway, God. So I like your comments. When I read the comments, I go, "Oh, cool, you know, and I like answering your questions. Yeah, it's funny. At first, I didn't think I was going to like doing that, but that's actually the only reason I'm doing my podcast at this point is for your comments. So your comments are so important to me, and there's not so many of them that I can't read them. Like if I had a zillion subscribers and a zillion comments, I couldn't read them all. But here we are, this little group of us, and we're all hanging out, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. The big kitty's out in the sunshine. It rained yesterday. Wow. Here in LA, when it rains, man, everybody freaks out because we're not used to that. This is the desert down here. So when it rains, it's like life stops, man. Everybody goes, it's raining, And that's how it is here. But today it's back to sunshine, endless summer. I know I have my coat on. It's cold in here. My house is always cold. Oh, well. It'll be summer soon. So if you have any more questions or you can remind me of anything, like that benefit for Chet Helms, I forgot all about that. That was such a fun gig, And I took some friends from LA up to just come dance on stage while I played, and I had all my shit was in a shopping cart. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was having fun. And yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I liked that gig. In fact, that was one of the... most of the gigs I didn't like too much. I hate to admit it, but I was sort of stressed out all the time about the gigs. But that was one gig I really enjoyed, man. I really enjoyed that gig. Yeah. I told you before, my favorite thing was I really enjoyed my music career more when I was an opening act, when I was opening for big bands and stuff. That was the best thing because there was no stress and I didn't feel it was my show and it was no pressure. Once I became a headliner, it was just stress city. I was always stressed out about, are enough people showing up? Am I doing good? It was a different vibe, It was a different vibe. It was something pressure. It had a lot to do with me stopping and playing. I didn't like the way it felt, I didn't like the way it felt, just all the time. I didn't like the way it felt. Plus, I was crazy. So you add not liking it and being crazy. It's pretty nice. But someone asked me what was the favorite band I played with, did open for. Well, I really enjoyed opening for Led Zeppelin those times I did that. Like at Kezar Stadium, that was such a great gig, and there was all those people there in San Francisco. I enjoyed that. I did some gigs with the Zeppelin. I think it was in Orange County down here in Southern California. I really enjoyed those gigs too. And back east, I did some gig with them. Oh, and somebody mentioned when we played, when we were headlining in Orange County, and we had Ike and Tina Turner open for us. And you got to understand, back in those days, if you were a headliner, you got to select who played with you. And so everybody had all these lists of bands that were acceptable for the promoters to be their opening act, and it was up to the band. So I was a little R&B kid, so I wanted those kind of bands opening for me. Like I wanted like Ike and Tina Turner. I said, yeah, Ike and Tina Turner. So that was great, And they got up, and there was all these zillions of people there, and they're up there showing their album. It looked like a postage stamp, And they were very funny. They were very funny. But that was an Ike and Tina Turner review, and they opened the show for us. One time we played. Here I go talk. I me my. What am I doing? Anyway, I played in Central Park one time, and John Ford Noonan was there, and we were all hanging out. And once again, I got to pick my opening act. I had Miles Davis opening for me. And so Miles Davis came on stage and he played his whole show with his back to the audience. It was the coolest thing because we were on the stage, so it was like he was playing to us, but not to the audience. It was really funny because we were off on the side watching him. But I really loved that, I don't think he didn't give a shit about my music or me or anything. I don't know even why he did that gig, but he did it and I liked it, But that was in Central Park in New York. That was pretty cool. Yeah. And who else? Oh, Creedence Clearwater Revival. We had the same booking agent, Jerry Heller, who became infamous with NWA. And he was that guy, that manager of them that they said ripped him off and everything. He was sort of a famous guy. Yeah, we did lots of gigs with Creedence. And, Creedence, I'll tell you something. Creedence, all those guys in the band were really nice, but Fogerty was really, he never talked and he wasn't very friendly. he was artistic, you know, he was doing his thing, and he was so, but the other guys, his brother and Doug and those guys were all really nice guys, man. And we used to kick a soccer ball around during the sound checks and stuff. It was just a great time, and they were great guys. Fogerty was just very standoffish as a person, but that's just who he was. I didn't hold it against him. Yeah, I didn't hold it against him. Yeah. I didn't even think about it, actually. I was relating to those other guys we were all friendly with, and he was on his own trip, and who cared? You know, I didn't care. He didn't care. So there you are. So I guess those were my favorite bands to open for, was Creedence and Zeppelin. The Zeppelin shows were epic. The Creedence shows were just regular old shows. You know, we did a zillion shows, the Creedence. Lots of shows, the Creedence. Where did we... Yeah, I forget. We did shows all over the country with those guys. They were really cool. Once I opened a show for Janis Joplin in Philadelphia. You got to understand, it was this big, giant arena where they play hockey, right? And somehow the promotion went really bad, and no one showed up. And I was glad I wasn't the headliner because it wasn't on me, you know. And that was after she broke her band up and went off and did her thing without her band and had some musicians backing her, and it wasn't really that good. It wasn't the same as when she had her band. When the Big Brother and the holding company were really special, there was something about those guys. They weren't virtuoso players, you know, they were not virtuosos, but somehow the sum of all their parts fucking was magic, man. It was magic, and she was magic, and it was really great. But I felt really bad for her that time because there we were, and she was already a big deal. Her album was really famous. She was really famous. And this building held like 20,000 people, and I don't know, just a couple of hundred people showed up. I don't know how that happened, but that's how it was. And that wasn't my favorite gig, but that's another gig where I opened for somebody, and it was. You never know, man. I guess some promoters did a bad job promoting, and not a lot of people showed up. 'Cause she was really popular. You remember her first album, man. It was that Big Brother and Holding Company was fucking amazing. I saw that a lot, you know, a lot of bands, you know, because I was all into this little R&B and trying to be the best little player I could be, because I played for years and I wasn't a singer. I was just a player, you know, and so my whole life was play, try to play better and better. Yeah, that's what I did. I just tried. So a lot of times I'd see these bands, you know, at first it was really perplexing to me, but then I finally got it. But I see these bands, and the guys weren't really that good at players, some of them, you know. They were just average kind of players. But somehow when they all played together, it was magic. And that really spun my head around. It made me reconsider everything, you know, because I see these bands where I would recognize that none of the guys were really great players, but together they were fucking amazing and magic. And that shows you that's when I started realizing virtuosity wasn't the only thing, the only currency. You know, there was something else going on. It wasn't the only currency. It was really cathartic, you know. Yeah. And a lot of those bands were folk singers before they started playing rock and roll. Oh, I know another album that I was talking about albums that I listened to. You know, an album when I was right out of high school, Highway 61 came out. You remember that, Bob Dylan? And that really spun my brain. And after that, all the folk singers bought electric guitars and started making bands. So that was really, I can't tell you how important that album was to the whole musical landscape. Before that, yeah, that just blew the lid off everything. And I played that album a lot. I was just out of high school. I was going to Fresno City and junior college, and I loved that album. So that was before all these other albums, you know. It was early. And that really spun it. Like all the folk singers after that bought electric guitars and started doing it. And it was really crazy, you know. Yeah. One time I saw the Byrds at the Peppermint Tree on Broadway in San Francisco. And Peppermint Tree was a club that booked mostly, show bands and stuff. And I was in a band in Fresno, Hayward Lee and the Marauders, and we had 2 drummers, and I was a little organ player kid, and we had played there a few times. Anyway, so, I was like into that R&B thing. And I remember seeing the Byrds. The Byrds played right after they did the Ed Sullivan show. They played at the Peppermint Tree on Broadway, and I remember watching them, and being sort of blown away because they had that 12-string, that Rickenbacker 12-string, and they were playing, and it just sounded so different than anything I'd ever heard. I thought, oh, this is so cool, it's so cool. And there was just the most beautiful blonde girl I'd ever seen in my life. And she was like really young and beautiful and just amazing. And she was just dancing all by herself when the Byrds were playing. She was dancing all by herself. And little did I know that years later she would become my wife. That was Mary, and she was out there dancing. And I remember sitting there watching the Byrds and watching her and thinking, fuck, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, And she was just dancing all by herself. Everybody used to dance by themselves. And I thought, oh, and then years later I saw her, and then we clicked, and that's history, man. Our whole family was, all my kids, everything. But yeah, boy, what am I talking about today? I'm telling you all this shit. But anyway, I enjoyed opening for people. It was really fun. It was more fun than when I was a headliner. It was more fun than when I was a headliner. Once we played at the Forum, I was playing at the Forum, and B.B. King, once again, they got to have people who you wanted opening shows. And B.B. King was opening the show for us, but he didn't show up. He personally didn't show up. His band showed up, but he didn't show up. And so he was late. And so his band was on stage playing without him. They were playing, and the promoter's going, that's it. We're taking him off the stage. You got to go. And I go, no, wait. He's going to show up. He's going to show up. And he didn't show up, and he didn't show up. You got to understand, there's 20,000 people there, and he didn't show up. And so he shows up. Anyway, he didn't show up. And so I kept saying, no, I'm not going to play. We got to wait for him to show up, And the promoter was getting mad, and they go, we got a time thing here. It's going to cost us thousands of dollars if we go over the time, blah, blah, blah. And B.B. King didn't show up, and it turned out he had been at some wedding or something. So finally he showed up, and he was all drunk, and he showed up, and by then we were on stage, and it was too late for him to play. And so 20,000 people, they said anybody that came for B.B. King could get a refund. So like 104 people got a refund, which is no big deal. But anyway, after the concert, we were at the airport at LAX, and we were getting ready to fly back to San Francisco. And B.B. King was in the airport. And I stood there, and he didn't know who I was. He had no idea. So I was overhearing his conversation. And he was complaining. He was still sort of half high, and he was complaining to these people, and he made up some cockamamie story. He made up the biggest lie, and I was so disappointed in him, because he was telling this big lie about why he didn't play, and I knew it was all 100% lie. And I says, well, the lying fuck, man. And I always liked B.B. King, but there he was, man. He didn't show up for my concert. And then afterwards he had the nerve to stand there and tell people a big lie about it. And so he was lying about what happened. And I remember thinking, fucking B.B. King, how can you be such a fuckhead, But once again, it didn't matter. 104 people got refunds. But yeah, that's my B.B. King story. I got a Chuck Berry story too, but I won't tell that right now. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. We were playing at the HIC Auditorium in Hawaii, and Chuck Berry was the opening act. Once again, I always had those kind of acts open for me, and so he'd played his set and he was done, and I was on stage playing, and Mary was standing off to the side of the stage, and I was playing, and I looked over, and Chuck Berry came up behind Mary and grabbed her with her arms pinned to her body and picked her up and was trying to drag her off the stage or some shit. So Mary broke free. This is a funny story. She broke free, And she spun around and she took her purse and she hit him so fucking hard. It was amazing, man. Like, I was just getting ready to jump off the organ, run over there and rescue her. And right as that happened, man, because she was a warrior, she broke free from him and she slugged him so hard in the face with her purse, man, she nearly knocked him out. Man, he was staggering. And he was a complete asshole. Anyway, that's my Chuck Berry story. I don't mind saying things. That's the truth, man. Some people were weird. He was a weird one. And I think that didn't Keith Richards do a documentary about him or something, and he talked about how weird he was? Like Chuck Berry, here's the kind of guy he was. Before he went on stage, he wanted all his money in cash, and he put all the money in his pockets. And so he would go on stage with his pockets all full of money, you know, because he was so paranoid to let anybody even touch his money. He was just beyond weird. And there was when I was really first starting out, I had the same business manager no, I didn't have the same business. It was I Tina Turner. I had the same business manager. Enough of Chuck Berry. He was a kook. He was a kook, and Mary slugged him really good. Mary clocked his ass with her purse. She go, bam! She hit him so fucking hard. I was so proud of her, man. But that's how it was back then. It was crazy, you know. Everything was crazy. Anyway, I had the same business manager as Ike and Tina Turner. This is really when Ike and Tina Turner were Ike and Tina Turner, and the business manager. He had a million stories about Ike Turner, man. He was the worst guy to business manage. He wanted to keep all his money in a briefcase every second and carry it with him. He was just like old school, you know. He didn't want nobody dealing with his money or trust. He didn't trust anybody. He was just like, he was a character. He was a real character. But they made some great music, man, you know. Sometimes some of the people that make great music aren't exactly nice, you know. And not everybody's cool, you know. But most of the bands, the 60s bands, most of those guys that I met were really nice, I have to admit. You know, yeah. Yeah. One of my segments, I tell a story about the guys that did the original Harlem Shuffle, how Bob and Earl scammed us down to play for the Miss World contest in Long Beach downtown LA. And they scammed us and left us on the street with nothing, anyway, that's a good segment. If you go back, you'll find it one of my segments. I don't remember which one it was, but that's the story of that. Listen, did anybody watch my movie? If you watched my movie, give me some feedback. I could use it. So go watch my movie. It's called Welcome to My Street, and it's on my podcast channel. You just type in search Welcome to My Street. And also, did anybody watch episode 104, the horrible abortion story and why I'm pro-choice? Did anybody watch that? Anyway, let me know if you watched episode 104. Let me know if you watched my movie. Press the like button. Press the like button. Bam! Press the like button. And maybe they'll start recommending my shit to somebody. I don't know why YouTube is keeping me down. Like every month I get 50 to 70,000 hits on Spotify, but I get nothing on YouTube. Nothing. I'm just flat, you know. And we should be doing better, but we're not. And I don't quite understand. But a lot of stuff I don't understand, man. I'm so bad at computers and I'm so bad at the internet, and yeah, bad. Anyway, I hope you're all doing good out there. Tell me what you're up to. Tell me what you want to know. I'm running out of stuff to talk about. I said that 50 episodes ago. I go, man, I'm running out of stories. But you guys keep suggesting stuff, and I go, oh yeah, I can talk about that. I can talk about this, this. You know, yeah. Oh. I know somebody asked me about Vietnamese coffee. If I've ever drank Vietnamese coffee. I've never tasted coffee in my life. I've never tasted a drop of coffee in my entire life. And you know, look how hyper I am. If I drank coffee, I would probably explode, man. I would explode. I'm caffeine free, man. I think I would explode if I drank coffee. I don't need that shit, man. I just wake up. I wake up like, I don't wake up like, I wake up like, bam, I'm awake and I'm ready for the universe. So that's part of being so hyper. So there, I'm answering all the questions. I never tasted coffee, and I've never tasted a cigarette either. You want to know why? It reminded me of my mother's breath. It's a true story, man. Every day when I wake up in this little house, first thing I would smell is cigarettes and coffee, and I would wake up and go, eh. And so I never drank coffee. Thank you, Mother. I never smoked cigarettes, and yeah, I just didn't want to do that, man. It just grossed me out, And I would hear country music, so that was it. Cigarettes, coffee, and country music. It was like a country song, It was real down home. Because the woman that adopted me, she was from Missouri, so she had to, that's the kind of house I grew up in. Country music, cigarettes, and coffee. Anyway, so I didn't ever drink coffee. I answered that question. Wasn't that weird about the Oswald check? Think about that for a second. Oswald's final payroll check was cashed by Jack Ruby 5 weeks before the assassination, or 3 weeks or something. But that's shocking, right? That's shocking. That proves the connection between Jack Ruby and Oswald, and the fucking Warren Commission never mentioned it in their report. And they saw that check. Anyway, that check wound up at an auction, and my optometrist, he bought that check. He had so many cool checks. It was pretty funny because I never thought, who collects checks? But he'd been collecting checks since he was a kid. So to me, that's the most significant check he had, and he didn't put it in his book because he was afraid of the government, Maybe I should be afraid of the government. Oh, man, I got a story to tell you guys. I got a couple of stories, but this one story I'm going to save for another day because it's an amazing story. Okay, I'm going to tell you some amazing boxing stories. Coming up, I'm going to tell you this other story that is beyond belief. You're going to go, how could you be so stupid? Man, talk about bonehead moves. I'm just over and over, I do the dumbest shit, man. I do stuff, and always afterwards I go, why did I do that? What was I thinking? Anyway, it's good to see all of you. I'm so happy to see you guys, because I know somebody's listening, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'm getting boring. Hope you're all having a good day. Hope you chime in and give me a comment, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, and tell a friend of yours to subscribe. I was told that most channels grow by word of mouth, but, I need some word of mouth. I've said it before, but I was looking at my demographic. My average viewers are like 70 years old. And so that makes my podcast a near-death experience, right? Here we are, a near-death experience. Anyway, I love you all. I'll see you later. This has been a lot of fun. God, I don't know why I like doing this so much, but I really like it. Okay. 3, 2, I don't know where the Big Kitty. Oh, Big Kitty said hi for a minute. Okay, start again. 3, 2, 1, poof.